Well, everybody, it looks like Kamala's gonna try and pull a Tim Ryan. Now, remember whenever Tim Ryan got his ass handed to him by Tulsi in the last debate? Which, by the way, I assume that the next smear about Tulsi will be that she's a serial killer, considering that she killed 2 campaigns in less than a month. But if you all remember, Tim Ryan got his ass handed to him by Tulsi and all of a sudden started smearing her as an Assad apologist. Kamala took a page out of his book. Take a listen.
Some of the toughest critique or attacks at you came from Tulsi Gabbard.
Mm-hmm.
Did you expect that from Tulsi Gabbard? Had you had interaction about that in the past? And how do you think it went?
Well, I mean, listen, this is going to sound immodest, but I'm obviously a top-tier candidate, and so I did expect that I would be on the stage and take hits tonight because there are a lot of people that are trying to make the stage for the next debate.
Yeah, for a lot of them, it's do or die.
Well, yeah, and especially when people are at 0 or 1% or whatever she might be at. And so I did expect that I might take hits tonight. But, you know, listen, I think that this coming from someone who has been an apologist for an individual, Assad, who has murdered the people of his country like cockroaches. She who has embraced and been an apologist for him in a way that she refuses to call him a war criminal. I can only take what she says in her opinion so seriously. And so I'm prepared to move on.
Now, in addition to these comments being made by Kamala herself, there are various people on Twitter asserting these comments, but this attack actually was initiated by none other than her own press secretary. And it's crazy because I'm like laughing, like, you know, I'm obviously always connected to Tulsi. Like, at least that's, you know, the articles always connect me to Tulsi, and I get attacked as a smear merch, or excuse me, as a conspiracy theorist for questioning official narratives, which my questions are usually pretty legitimate. But this guy actually props up a whole conspiracy theory that was actually debunked and is propping up an article that celebrates and legitimizes an organization that was removed from Facebook for spreading fake Russian accounts. So it's just hilarious to me that this man goes on and starts pushing the Assad narrative. Kamala couldn't think of the narrative while she was up on stage looking like she was about to cry, but she manages to, you know, her press secretary said, hey man, mention Assad. You know what wasn't mentioned in any of this stuff? Did Tulsi lie about something? Why was there no corrections issued? See, whenever Tulsi is attacked, like she was attacked in the NBC article that Kamala's press secretary tried to use, you know what she did? She presented the facts. Remember? Whenever she's smeared as an Assad apologist, she quickly explains to people, first of all, Committee of Foreign Affairs supposed to meet with other leaders, but also met with opposition. And guess what they both have in common? They don't like the fact that the United States is propping up terrorist organizations in the region in order to destroy their country. That's the part of the story that doesn't get told. That's why they constantly smear Tulsi. Oh, you know the story that also doesn't get told? The fact that Nancy Pelosi met with Assad, coincidentally enough, right before we started sending humanitarian aid and destroying their nation. And you know who she didn't meet with? The opposition. She only met with Assad. But she's not smeared as an Assad apologist, is she? It is utterly despicable that we have a current major in the National Guard, 2-time war veteran, being smeared as a sympathizer. By the way, we're not getting into the whole, oh, he murdered his people, he did what none of that stuff is conclusive. Take him to, if you want to call him a war criminal, take him to International Criminal Court, which you won't do because the United Nations keeps exonerating the man. Y'all, the OPCW already found out that the attacks were fake. The last attacks were fake, as Rand Paul had suggested they were. So even still, you can't even say he's a war criminal because that would be a lie. Tulsi is trying to make diplomacy the norm And you're smearing a war veteran with actual foreign policy experience who says we must meet with who we have to because the only alternative is war. And she knows better than anybody else that is absolutely the case. She's healed more damaged bodies, reported on more deaths than you could even imagine, Kamala. I imagine you'd probably get queasy around one injured soldier. Imagine repairing dozens and hundreds of them. Blood, tears, desperation, guilt. Imagine having to repair all those soldiers knowing that they're getting shot and dying for a legitimate cause. And you want to smear a soldier? Oh, so I get it. Because that's what it is. So for us vets, when we're shooting people that you point and tell us to shoot at, and we don't question you, it's support the troops. But when we question Saddam Hussein, or we question the Russiagate narrative, or we question destroying Assad's entire country, or, any of the sort, we're apologists. We're Putin puppets. Your press secretary called an active duty major a puppet of Russia, an officer of the United States Army, a puppet of Russia. Think about that, Kamala. Is that how low we've gotten? And what I find even more interesting, but not all that surprising, is that Twitter actually engaged in this. They constantly, and I'm going to do a separate video about this, but they constantly took down Tulsi's name as she was trending #1, which they can't even help it now. Because even though she's not trending #1 in the US, the last time I checked, 410,000 people were tweeting about Tulsi. 410,000. She was trending #1 here in Miami. Somebody else said she was trending #1 in Utah. Another person told me she was trending #1 in Michigan. So they can do what they can, but it's not going to matter. But I find it interesting that Assad's name was trending #1 at some point last night after they erased Tulsi's name from trending #1. Isn't that quick? Because they talk about Tulsi in the same tweet that they talk about Assad, but Tulsi's name get completely erased. And, oh, by the way, you wonder, just out of curiosity, if that has anything to do with the fact that Saudi Arabia actually owns more than Jack Dorsey does of Twitter. Jack Dorsey maxes out donations to Tulsi after Tulsi critiqued Saudi Arabia. Methinks there might be something else going on. Maybe maybe Tulsi is bringing a true unbalance to power right now. That where something is, because they didn't know that. I actually texted the campaign that Saudi Arabia owns more of Twitter than Jack does. You think Jack is happy with the fact that his message probably isn't controlled? Or not in his control? Not when Saudi Arabia owns most of your company. And all of a sudden, the smears come out the woodwork. And in the midst of all of this, oh, by the way, Twitter's communication director is a Kamala alumna. Yeah. So with all this conversation from Kamala, her campaign people, her former campaign people, Twitter trying to save her campaign, why nobody asked if anything that Tulsi said was true or was a lie? Why didn't you correct her? Oh, that's right. Because you did keep those people in prison for cheap labor. You did keep a man on death row until a federal judge ordered you to release him. You did withhold evidence that would have, by the way, this is the part that Tulsi didn't get to mention. That evidence incriminated police officers for framing a man. That's why she didn't want to release it. That's why she blocked it, because she was also accepting money from police unions. She didn't even get to the part where Kamala pushed for civil forfeiture. Didn't get to the part where Kamala tried to block body cams. Didn't get to any of that. But was anything that she said a lie, Kamala? No. And that's why you couldn't dispute it. Miss, it's clear I'm a top tier candidate. Whoo! You was a top tier candidate. You was one. You was, now you wasn't. Congratulations. She already told you. Don't ever in your life confuse aloha with weakness. You had all the time in the world to speak. Not once did you correct the record for Tulsi. In fact, when Tulsi first addressed you, you ran away like a little punk ass and turned around towards Biden. And then Tulsi was like, "Get over here." Hey, you can only hide from the truth so long, Kamala. I said from the very beginning, I told everybody this. I said they're going to play their hand too early. They are. And they did. They put out every smear they could about Tulsi from the very beginning. Wore it out. Nobody believes it anymore except for the bots on Twitter. Nobody believes that. Half the country doesn't know who the hell Assad is, let's be honest. But the thing is, out of every candidate, the only one who has been legitimately battle tested, not just from smears, but from the truth about her past as well. I don't know why we're litigating things that people said when they were 21, but whatever. But some of the things that were said were true. And guess who the only candidate to actually apologize for the things and reconcile for the things that she had done, most of which before she was ever in Congress? Tulsi. But guess who's the only one who's been legitimately battle tested? And from the ashes rose a phoenix. You know, it's funny. I learned something today. Hindus wear white to funerals. And that seems quite fitting because it clearly looks like Tulsi came in here to put your campaign in the dirt. And she did that. Fuck that shit 2020.
Hey, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get all of our notifications if you like that episode of Mikasa Sukasa. You can also help continue to grow our show by donating to our Patreon and helping us hit our goal of 500 patrons. But remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.